So if you guys can accept that, thank you. All right, welcome to Decoding Your Spiritual Ecosystem. I'm really excited about this class. Um, Before we get started, there's a couple of unfamiliar faces here, so I'll just be kind and introduce myself. Though it would be kind of weird if you took a class with somebody you didn't know, but you know, um, I don't know. The internet has a lot of stuff on it. Um, I am Sophia Horniak, aka Divine Void Sophia, one half of the Magical Baddies podcast. I am an Akashic teacher. I am an occult historian. Um, and I also have an extensive background in ceremonial and ritualistic magic. Um, I'm certified as an Akashic teacher and have trained under people like Linda Howe and Helen Vonderheide. I worked out of ye old occults or Harry's occults in Philly back in the day when it actually existed. I was there for about 10 years, working beside some really cool Zenteros and hoodoo practitioners, and that was quite the experience. It's like working at a shitty tattoo shop before you actually get like your own actual shop. You just like deal with a lot of stuff off the street. So got lots of experience there. Um, but my own practice is a blend of bhakti yoga, which is the devotional yoga. It's the philosophy. It's not really the body stuff I care too much about. Um, I am also a historical nerd, so I do a lot of research throughout philosophies and religion, though dogma is not really my thing. I like to read between the lines of a lot of these codex and books to get to the real juice of the matter. Um, and I do study a lot of Western mystery tradition, which would be Hermetic Kabbalah, though I do find myself moving towards the Judaic mysticism rather than the Hermetic mysticism. So that has changed over time in the last couple of years. So those of you who know me, there's going to be some shifts that are going to be a little bit more obvious. But to the core of who I am, I was raised in a tin roof, like deep in the woods in Southern Virginia, like deep south. And my grandmother was a root worker. My grandfather was a farmer, dairy farm, not tobacco, even though we were surrounded by tobacco. And her grandmother was also a root worker. So I got to grow up in a very magical home. I think that is karmic. But in the South, if you are familiar with the South, there are way more churches than gas stations. Oh, there's Natalie. Let her back in. And my husband pointed this out one time. We were down there visiting, and um, I was like, yeah, there's for a place that has a lot of churches, it's really hard to find faith here. And I remember as a kid, everybody else went to church, but we didn't go to church. And I thought that was like a little weird, because everyone's different than us. And we were outside one day and I asked my grandma, I'm like, Grandma, how come we don't go to church? And she's like, you see all this here? God's in nature. And so this class is sort of an ode to her and how I get to see the world. I think that all of my extensive training is great, but it really comes down to like how I grew up and what my base was. And if seeing, the divine within the world um, only amplifies the trainings that I've had, not the other way around. So that's what we're going to be learning here. I think it's really cool that a lot of people reach out to me and they're like, Sophia, do you ever teach the Akashic Records? And I'm like, no. The Akasha is here. Dimensional is not linear. It's all around us. So we're going to be reorienting our lives to that. Before we get started, I'm just going to lay down some ground rules, some housekeeping. Um, yeah, I guess rules isn't really great because I don't really like rules, but housekeeping would be the correct way of saying that. First and foremost, hate, disrespect, passive aggressiveness, any bullying of any kind will not be tolerated. Having this Discord channel, having such a small group, I think that we have a really great opportunity to share and exchange ideas and create a community. And I would love for people to connect, but I do want people to understand to continue to respect other people's boundaries and respect that we are all exploring in this space. So just because something is true to you doesn't necessarily mean it's true for somebody else. So please respect that. I do, in the world of social media and all the buzzwords and stuff that's out there, first and foremost, I am not trauma informed. I don't think that this class can be triggering, but who am I to say? But I want to put that out there. I am not trauma informed, and I do not promise a safe space where people will not get triggered. And all I can do is be respectful and try to hold the space the best that I can. But this is not a psychology class. This is not a love and light class, and I'm not a medical professional. So please feel free to advocate for yourself. But know that I'm not necessarily always going to have the extra care that maybe somebody with trauma that is trauma informed would have. I'm a little rough around the edges, but I think you guys probably know that. I'm all for people connecting, but please do not use this space to solicit services. And I think we have a nice diverse group of very magical beings, but I ask that while you're with me, just allow yourself to be a student. And with that being said, as a student of mine, I'm trying to teach something that is intangible. So all I can do is teach it through my lens, but not everything is going to resonate for you. And what I ask is that just take what works for you and add it to your system and leave what does not work for you. And feel free to ask questions or add your point of view, but don't ever take my word for law. My system works for me and makes sense for me. My offer to everyone else is to take the information that I found and run with it in the direction that you want to run. Okay, cool. All right. Any questions? No? Cool. All right. Let me share my screen. Cool. You guys get to see how insane my screen looks most of the time. All right. I'm going to drop this so you guys can see. Cool. So decoding your spiritual ecosystem, obviously this is why you guys are all here. I want to set in place that because of my background in Kabbalistic studies, Akasha, Bhakti, history, you'll see a lot of that information presented throughout this course. But I just want to be clear, I don't want to push any sort of dogma. I know there's a lot of people that hold a lot of religious wounds, and I honor that, but I ask that, if something comes up, just please keep an open mind. I'm always looking at things through a mystic's point of view. I'm always looking in between the lines. If I present something, a concept that maybe you are not super familiar with, don't worry, I'll explain it as it pertains to what we're learning. But, again, feel free to ask questions. There isn't a neutral science to all of this. If there is, I haven't found it. So all I can do is offer this through my lens. My goal here is for us to create a way or at least inspire you to transform your everyday life and reality through a more consciously attentive, mindfully becoming aware of the contact that we are in with all beings, all nature, all material. And this class is about reorientation. So we want to reorient ourselves as seeing ourselves as a part of nature rather than object observation. Because if you're always on the outside, you're always going to be on the outside of magic, right? So like when you feel those signs, those synchronicities, those messages, and you just feel like you just can't, you just don't get it. What is it? Like you feel like something's pulling at you. Well, if you're looking at it from the outside, you're just always going to be standing on the peripheral. So this lens has to reflect the reality in which you exist. And so some of this is maybe tricking the mind, but we'll see what we can do. So we'll be looking at 3 perspectives throughout the class. We will, I think this is important in that looking at history and science, and most of this class will be the history and science part. I think it's important that it corresponds to our very Western way of thinking and understanding. Like we have a tendency to have more confidence in processes and appearances if they have an explanation, right? And for me as a historian, it's important for me to have a source for the way I practice. So that just made sense to me. Mysticism is the internal connection with the divine. It's the relationship between the individual and the divine, which is deeply personal. And magic is the ability to bring down that wisdom or divine wonder and create the reality and relationship in our surroundings. So we're going to look at how these 3 things intersect. Through these 3 or 4 modes, we really want to reveal the limitation of our concept of reality. Again, I can't tell you how this is done in to a science. If you guys wouldn't mind just putting yourselves on mute, that'd be great. Thanks. So yeah, I can't tell you how this is done to a science. I can offer you the foundation. I can lead you through the prompts. It's really up to you if it's going to be resonant or not, because it is going to take faith in these spaces where it just might feel like you can't grasp it. So, what is a spiritual ecosystem? Utilizing the as above, so below as the foundation of this idea, the spiritual ecosystem is the structural yet fluid functional unity of ecology, where the omnipresent is reflected and interacts with a being's various bodies and their surrounding environment. An ecosystem is a chain of interactions between the omnipresent, the dimensional, energy, technology, and environment. So all across lots of philosophies, we hear about the interconnected of all things. And what the Akasha gave me was this image of a disco ball, which I think is really fun. But basically what they're saying is the turning of the disco ball is that constant change. And each person or each sentient being is those little facets of mirrors on the disco ball. And so you can get up really close to it and you can see one person, one being, but far away you can see that we're all connected. And the omnipresent or God would be the reflection of light on those beings, and they reflect light onto the floor. And that's, that's how this all works, or at least that's how they explain to me. So the functions of the ecosystem, it regulates the essential ecological processes, supports life systems, and renders guidance. So like if guidance is the eye of the beholder, like a bird can just be a bird, right? But if you have an attentive awareness and feel resonance, that can render the guidance that you need through connection and action. Again, that boils down to resonance, but we will get to that. It is also responsible for cycling of energy messages between spiritual and material components. Beings, energy, action, and inaction all share the same function and same value in relationship to the primary source of energy. So that's whatever you want to call it, omnipresent, God, Ein Sof. This is important to understand that there is no hierarchy in beings, actions, in energy. They all have a different function, but nobody is at the will of spirit. And it's important to understand that because you really want to embrace the idea that you are a co-collaborator in this whole system, right? And that's what an ecosystem is. It's equal, it's symbiotic. It also helps, I think, when you start to understand that you are a co-collaborator, it also helps to strengthen your confidence and your trust in what you see, what you feel, what you hear in yourself, really, your intuition. Um, it cycles the energy through the biosphere. So that's basically saying that energy is everything and never ending. And the abiotic components help in the synthesis of material components that involve the exchange of energy. So abiotic is anything that's not biological. So that's systems, that's technology. And I think that there is a lot of fear-mongering discourse around technology. Um, Again, like whatever is resonant for you, but for me, I just feel that technology had to come from somewhere, right? It's an idea that comes into fruition. And to me, as a Kabbalist, that would say that that comes from divine eminence. And if we look at it as divine intelligence, then like we can see that technology is a life force as well. Like you can see spirit can talk to you through the utilization of systems like technology. I mean, Natalie was just sharing that story about uh, getting airdropped messages, and I got called a butthead on my computer. So, technology can also be utilized in these systems. Um, oh, okay, all right. So moving forward. All right, so we're gonna get into our first story. Um, let's break down the two main components of the disco ball, the reflection and the interconnectedness. So, starting with the reflection of the divine, we're going to talk about Ezekiel's vision. Ezekiel's vision, if you're not familiar, is a passage in the Bible where Ezekiel has a vision of the Merkava, not the Merkaba, not the sacred geometry, but the Merkava, the chariot. This is where he sees the thrones and the four-headed creatures. And so in that story, it says, "Now it came to pass in the 30th year, in the fourth month, in the fifth day of the month, as I was among the captives by the river Chebar, that the heavens opened and I saw visions of God." This line is quite important. "In the fifth day of the month, which is the fifth year of King Jehoiakim's captivity, the word of the Lord came expressly unto Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Chebar. And the hand of the Lord was there upon him." So, basically what this is telling us is that Ezekiel, the priest, is in exile. He's in a foreign land. He's a priest. And now this is right when the Temple of Solomon is destroyed. If you are not familiar, don't worry, let's just take it out of context. And essentially, the temple is important because this is sacred space, right? This is where we encounter God. This is where we encounter spirit. And so, who is this priest? Not only is he away from his home, but he's away from the sacred space where he encounters God. And he's by this river. And this is also important because I think that the story reflects, the importance of diaspora. You see it in African diaspora, you see it in Jewish diaspora, that you have to find somewhere to find hope, find faith. And typically what you do is you go to a river, because the river represents cleansing, it's flowing, it represents freedom. um, and I also think that that reflects in that very feeling that a lot of us who are attuned to the spiritual life have that feeling at some point in our lives of feeling isolated, or not a part of or loneliness. And I think that diaspora speaks to that. So, that is quite important in this story. Um, so as a Kabbalist, we're always looking for the threads that kind of connect everything. And so this guy, Raut Yehexel of the 4th and 5th century, he's also like, what's up with this river? So he says, when I was in the community of exiles at the Kebar River, the heavens opened and I saw visions of God. Ezekiel was standing on the river Kebar, looking down at the water, and the 7 firmaments of heaven were open to him, and he saw the glory of the Holy One. This matter may be compared to a man who is getting his hair cut and was handed a mirror by a barber. As he looked in the mirror, the king and his entourage passed by the doorway. And when the barber saw them, he said to his customer, "Turn around, look at the king." The man replied, "I have already seen him in the mirror." So, what he's saying here is that Ezekiel is he's at the river looking down. He's not looking up to the sky. He's not seeing the chariot looking up. He's looking down into the water. And he's painting this picture that Ezekiel is essentially like the guy getting a haircut. He's using this water as a reflective source. It's his mirror. And what he sees is like he already sees the king. He doesn't need to look away. He's like, no, I don't need to look at him. I already see him. I embrace that. And I don't need to turn around. If I turn around, I lose this vision that I already have. There's also like two Hebraic puns here. So Kebar, uh, right here, Kebar, is in Hebrew when you say you've already done something. And it's kind of played in the river Kebar. So he's already done it. He's already seen God in the river. And that kind of connects there. There's also visions of God is Myro, and a mirror in Hebrew is Mara. So the vision is in the mirror in Kebar. So those are like those little nuggets that somebody else could miss, or telling us like he's already seen the 7 firmaments. He's already seen the Holy One in this water. And so we now see that he sees the Merkava in the water. Thus Ezekiel stood beside the Kebar River, gazing in the water, and the 7 heavens were opened to him. So he saw the glory of the Holy Blessed One, the Chayot, which are holy celestial creatures, the ministering angels, the angelic hosts, the seraphim, whose sparkling wings, all attached to the Merkava, the divine chariot. They passed by in heaven while Ezekiel saw them in the water. Hence the verse says, by the Kebar River. So we're just reiterating that he saw them in the water. He doesn't see them up in the sky. So a lot of this art that we see, let me see if this one had it. They have him by the water, but they're showing him looking up, but he's truly looking down. He's seeing it reflected here. And then Rabbi Isaac Cohen is a Spanish Kabbalist connected to the Zohar. And he too is trying to make sense of this link between the chariot and the river. And he says, regarding what is said by the Kebar River, according to its simple meaning, it is known among the experts of natural science and medicine that the clear waters of the rivers and well springs brighten the eyes, gladden the heart, and expand the mind. And when the sun shines on these waters, an array of many colors and illuminations appear in them. And this natural imagery is a pathway to expand the human mind so that the spiritual light of emanation shining from celestial waters appears and rests upon the person. And this is the secret of, and I saw the visions of divine. So he's saying that everyone knows waters are transformative, that we may be out in the world, our eyes are growing dim, our hearts are hardening. But at the river is where healing can take place. You can have a mikvah, you can have a baptism, you can cleanse yourself here. And it's not just this divine vision, but also the healing powers of nature, which can expand our minds beyond limitation. It's sort of if you've ever had a incredible download and there's colors that you can't really put the words to, that like almost iridescent, um, sparkly thing that you see. I have no idea what those colors are. You don't know what to call them. I guess iridescent is the closest thing that you can call them. But when you look into water, they almost reflect that same concept. And it's almost beyond our language. He also talks about emanations, which for the Kabbalists is the flow of energy through the tree of life, which we will get to in a moment. And so, like, the secret here is that Ezekiel has this encounter with the chariot, and it would not be possible without that river. And when you dig into it, um, you realize that this might have just been some kind of vision work. In trance practices, you're typically focused on like something reflective. So, like a light, um, a a candle, a water, a mirror, darkness, obsidian, which is like a little precursor to my trance class. But um, he was staring, gazing at this river in order to have this vision. So this huge part of the Bible, this vision, this ability to describe the different angels, um, all is done in nature. And so I mentioned the emanations, and we're going to, talk very briefly about the Kabbalistic tree of life. Um, we're not going to go deep into it because for some people who are not familiar with it, it just won't click. But uh, what I want to kind of move what we just learned about, this divine thing, this thing that could probably explode our heart, has to be reflected into nature in order for Ezekiel to absorb and see its wonderment. And so the Kabbalistic tree of life in the formative worlds truly is sort of how the Kabbalists create a science in how that happens. And so this is actually incorrect. They have the Ein and the Ein Sofor in the wrong location. But the tree of life here is essentially what we're saying is the Ein, the nothing. So this area would be like, it's so beyond our human brains to grasp God at its purest form, right? And so that's what Ein actually is nothingness. And then we go into Ein Sof, which is the boundless. This is where limitlessness and boundlessness start to unfold out of the Ein. And the Ein Sofor, which is what's supposed to be here, is the self-realization. That's divine self-knowledge before creation. So it's before the nothingness. It's before we can, it's after the nothingness that we can't grasp it. This is where it starts to grasp what it is. And so, if God were to show itself, or the Merkava were to show itself, what they're saying, it's like it's so beyond our brains to conceptualize this. Like, personally, I kind of laugh to myself when I read books about people encountering angels, and they're like, and then he showed right there in my house. It's like, how does your heart not explode to something so divine, like, and maybe, that's their reality. But what we're seeing here is what they're saying is like it has to be reflected somewhere. And so what the Kabbalists kind of break down is the emanations trickle down from Keter, which is now the form of creation, and it flows down this tree of life into Malkut, which is a formation. This is the kingdom. This is earth, or excuse me, matter. And the formative worlds, you see this is essentially like the tree of life. This actually isn't as important as this one here in terms of what we're talking about, but I wanted to show this because the tree of life or the formative worlds can basically be stretched out, I mean, even further than this, or really condensed into a smaller microcosm. So you can look at this from the microcosmic point of view and the macrocosmic point of view. And so what they say is there's four formative worlds. You have the world of emanation right here. You have Bariat, the world of creation. Yetzira is the world of formation, and Asya is the world of action. So this kind of explains a little bit of how that reflective emanation can happen. It also kind of helps to explain, like, I'm going to way oversimplify this, but this is an example. So say like you are like, man, it'd be so cool if we had something that could record our ideas. And so what can we create? So that question in itself, that is already above here, working into the world of emanation. This idea that like we should have something in my hand, we should have something to create. And then in the world of creation, this would be the dreaming. Okay, you might dream about a pen. And the world of formation is now we're designing and formulating what this pen is. It's got ink in it and you can write with it, and and then you create it. This is the world of action, and you show it to your friends and you write it on paper. So this will make more sense in the science of things, but it also is kind of like, these are like the ideas that we have, right? Or the desires we might have. Truly, they aren't necessarily ours. They are a collective desire. They are an idea coming from the divine somewhere. This want or this need is something, it's coming from something higher than us, but it's coming through us and it's coming through our ecosystem. So, say that could be like, I have a desire to go to London, right? And it sounds selfish, but that's something divine in itself. And so you might dream about it. And then you might like start to come up with the ideas, and you might like right in here in this world of creation and formation, you start to see, UK on somebody's license plate, or these little pings are all around you in your ecosystem, and they're saying, hey, like, let's try to start to formulate this. And so now you're like, you know what, I keep getting these signs, and so I'm going to start planning this. I'm going to save up and update my passport and all of that, and you start to do that, and that goes into the world of action. And that's how these things come through. So through this emanation, through creation and formulation, this is your spiritual ecosystem all at work. It's not just you. So let's, and before I get into that, I also want to note a little science here. In quantum physics, a subatomic particle actually has to be in two places at once. And some of these places may be in other worlds. These kind of worlds, which reveal through quantum physics, are closer to those that explain subtle energy. So even quantum physics says like these ideas exist in different worlds. This many worlds ideas, and it's not necessarily like another Earth, but it's a world of being. And so quantum physics is essentially kind of in line with what Kabbalists have been saying all this time. Okay, so real quick, before we get into the interconnectedness of all things, let's see. Does anybody have any questions so far? Any? No? Everybody following? Not too over the head? Okay, cool. All right, let's keep going then. All right, interconnectedness of all things. I'm gonna make this smaller for those that are watching later. All right. So we got real deep into some biblical scripture, but I also want to go into some other modes of philosophy and religion to kind of see that, like, these things blend in different places. So here we have an excerpt from the Bhagavad Gita. The Gita is a Hindu scripture about the conversation between Prince Arjuna, sorry, and his charioteer, his guide Krishna. It's also kind of funny that the guide is a charioteer and Ezekiel saw a chariot. I'm just making that connection now. But anyways, Lord Krishna is avatar of Lord Vishnu, so we can call him God for the sake of this. And the setting takes place on a battlefield, which is an allegory for the struggle of human life. And he says, he who experiences the unity of life sees his own self in all beings, and all beings in his own self, and looks on everything with an impartial eye. He who seeks me in everything, and everything in me, him shall I never forsake, nor shall he lose me. The sage who realizes the unity of life and who worships me in all beings lives in me, whatever may be his lot. O Arjuna, he is the perfect saint who, taught by the likeness within himself, sees the self everywhere, whether the outer form be pleasurable or painful. So he's saying, you see God, the saint, the person that's close to God, will see God in everything, but he will also see himself in everything, essentially saying he is also God. And they, or whatever, that they see, all these beings are also God and also himself. And so this is a long way of saying everything is interconnected and reflective. All beings, rather than existing independently, exist in relation to other beings. For example, let's use a hand with 5 fingers. From a narrow view, we can only see 1 finger at a time. Each of the 5 fingers exists independently. However, from a wider view, we can see that the 5 fingers are connected to each other, even though each finger is different from one another. And that's from Pom Yin. He is the guiding Zen master of the Yungto Society. So he says something very similar to what the Akasha said to me about the disco ball. Like, up close, you see it's an individual facet. You see it's one being. But when you move further away, you see it's all interconnected. And in Buddhism, they view everything in the world as interconnected. When Buddha gained enlightenment, it was the realization that interconnectedness is the true nature of all beings. We're not only connected to other people, but through the air we breathe and the universe through light. Thus, severing these interconnections means death for all beings. Therefore, these interconnected relationships are symbiotic, or at least should be in our planet. So it's saying, what I was talking about, co-collaboration, it's symbiotic, it's equal. It gives, as much as it helps us, these signs help us, we do the same, so it's kind of like, think about these a sign that, or a synchronicity that really gave you like trust that you are in the right place at the right time, or it just like made your day. And think about how another time where you felt really drawn to either opening a door for someone or complimenting them on their outfit, or just something like out of, maybe not out of character for you if that's who you are, but you might have affected somebody in that same level, that same way. Or if you left food out for a cat, like there's a symbiosis here, there's an equal way. We're not just taking, we're also giving. So we're going to start getting into the science of energy. And as I mentioned before, like our Western minds, it's easier to have confidence in processes if they have like an explanation. And I see this a lot online where it's like, oh, the science of things. And look, I am all for science. I am all for going to the doctor. I'm all for all of that. But, I also want to offer you, or bear in mind that before science was a true formulation, the alchemical processes and the occult were essentially the sciences until they could get the outcomes and the solutions and formulations. Um, Alchemy is the grandparent of science, and faith fed into that possibility. So, regardless of how we want to look at this, I think if quantifiable research helps more people know the gift of experiencing limitlessness in being, we're on the right track. But I also want to note that like measurements can kind of be submissive vehicles for like meeting prejudice and fear, because when you have something that seems intelligent or scientific or is researched, when you have a tendency, if you are a person that tends to doubt, it gives you a little more confidence to trust. But ultimately, when we are in these states, these altered states of consciousness, or when we reorient our lens to see this consciousness as something as part of our normal state, like no definition is going to matter until you experience it yourself. So, bear that in mind. So energy is usually defined as a source of power that can be used to accomplish work or a goal or to create an effect. Or energy can be defined as information that vibrates. And research has proven that everything energetic contains information. So vibration is produced in the form of amplitude and frequency, oscillations that generate more energy. These oscillations carry information that can be stored or applied. So this is kind of like what we were talking about all the way in the beginning, right? Um, Messages can be replaced with information, and um, this cycle of energy is the vibration, the oscillation, the movement. It's all constantly moving. These systems are constantly moving. All right, where are we at? All right, cool. So while we're speaking on science, we're standing at the point of view as a person because we're people. But I want us to bear in mind that these explanations can be applied to all living things simultaneously. So yes, sentient beings, plants, animals, um, but a home has an energy to it. Um, and I believe like a home has like a personality and an energy to it. Um, Technology can be part of this. So I want us to look at these living intelligences from this point of view as we're moving forward. I want you to imagine that. So the information as well as the vibrating oscillations can change depending on the nature of a particular reaction. All of life is made of information and vibration. Um, when we talk about vibrations, when we talk about waves, in electromagnetic science, yes, there is a negative and a positive, and those poles will attract or subtract, or contract or expand. But waves are neutral. And so their only thing that they're looking for is to match. That's all they're looking for. They're looking for a vibrational match or for potential to meet a match. So subtle fields in the body. Dr. King Bonham says one of the subtle energy structures, the meridian system, serves to link the etheric field to the developing physical body. So what he's saying is, in Chinese medicine, that meridian system also connects to our etheric field. It's not just in our body. It's not like that's it. It connects to something higher. And if you've ever had acupuncture done, I'm not sure how many of you have, but they do a couple of connections to, or pins to, like, the emotions. Well, all organs or meridians connect to some kind of form of emotion, but there's one point in particular, the point of origin, that is a highly emotional and etheric point. And it's not necessarily for anything, like not for headaches or for allergies or for anything, but it's for something very emotional and something bigger in your field, and you can feel it when it happens. So that's what he says. Lawrence and Phoebe Bennett, while physical bodies are restricted to one place, the subtle field penetrates over particles of the body and extends beyond that. So essentially what they're saying is just that, like, it's not like we don't stop at our bodies. There's an energy field outside of it. To me, it also explains the science of resonance and anti-resonance in our body. Anti-resonance, if you're not familiar, I love using this term, is the opposite of resonance. It's like when you don't want to work at a job anymore and they email you and you can feel it in your bones, you like fucking hate it. That's anti-resonance. That's telling you, like, I'm not supposed to be here anymore. So I think that that explains the anti-resonance and the resonance in our bodies. Like, how do we connect to something that feels in or out of alignment that isn't in our body, right? Like, how do we feel that in our body? That interaction of energy creates that effect on us, that jolt, that pit in the stomach, the rush of joy, the rush of anger. I think that that is what they're explaining. I hope that makes sense. All right. So, key subtle structures. This is actually from a really great book. I actually took this picture. It's, I will have a list in the workbook of all the resources I used, but I think this is a great example of the subtle energy fields. It shows you the auric field, the morphological field, T field, L field, universal field, geo fields. And so this is kind of what the Bennetts are saying. Like, we're not just at our bodies, we are all of this. This is all of us. So the auric field is one of the main subtle fields. It surrounds the human bodies and links to the chakra energy bodies, right? Which would make sense why you can see the colors in photographs. Morphogenic fields. The M field connects to organisms within a group. So it can be visualized as an outline of energy, commonly referred to in science as the torus energy pattern. So this guy, this torus field. You can also find these fields literally on every sentient being, but you see it a lot like around Earth, but human beings have it as well. So that's the torus field around that. The Vivaxis links the human body with the Earth, so that's your geofield. That is like the Schumann resonance, that connection that we have there. And then there's other fields that link us to different planes and dimensions, such as the etheric and astral fields. There are other fields on the body that are produced by sound, magnetism, electromagnetic radiation, geometry, etc. Subtle fields are really hard to measure, but they're there. And researchers are now using thermo, electromagnetic, and radioactive materials to prove the existence and the functions. So yes, this can feel a little woo if you're taking a yoga class and you're like, yeah, we have an auric field, whatever, or like, it's very like what's that movie where the girl goes out with the band and the girl's like, your aura, it's so yellow. You know, it can feel a little like that, but there are researchers tracking this. We also have like Kirlian photography, which is kind of like the grandfather to auric photography. Um, it was thought to measure soul fields, but after they did some experiments at UCLA, they found it measures water and electro coronal discharge. But the interesting thing that they found is that if you rip a piece of a leaf off and then you do the Kirlian photography, there's almost like a ghost aspect. Like it will show up in that photography. So there's ways of measuring it. Particles and waves. All right, so this is resonance. This is alignment. This is that law of attraction. It's all of that. So, particle theory explains that all matter is made of small particles and they're always moving, right? Energy is always moving. We know that. Then there's waves, which are counterparts to the particles. Waves have a constructive influence on matter when they superimpose or interact by creating other waves. So they can merge with each other. I'm going to show you guys a video where you can see that. So this is like that when you talk about in alignment or in resonance or within the frequency, this is that energy that is matching energy. Waves or particles operating in wave mode oscillate or swing between 2 points in a rhythmic motion. These oscillations create fields. So think about if you're in a session with somebody and they are downloading, and that field, I mean, actually, it doesn't even have to be downloading. You can just be in a field with somebody else, but whatever waves are matching, they're going to expand as well, right? Because that's going to take up the space in which you are sharing. Superposition in relation to waves means that a field can create effects in other objects and in turn be affected itself. Um, so basically what this is saying is that an atom can make its own wave and field, and the new movement can force a change in the wave that started it all. So there's a really great story I really like from Radhanath Swami. He's an American Hindu, and he has this quote where he says, spirituality is like a perfume. If you're wearing a really sweet smelling perfume and you walk past somebody, it's going to make them turn their head and say, what is that perfume? So superposition is saying that like it can affect that perfume, that smell is those waves. And it can affect other people. So it can make somebody say, what is that? Or I want to know more about that. Or, what is that smell? So I think that's like a very overly simplified way of explaining that, but hopefully that explains that. Look at this guy. All right, this guy. This is Stanford professor Dr. William Tiller. He's a researcher, physicist, and expert on subtle energy. He spearheads the idea of a new physics called conscious creation. I'm sorry, I just realized this picture of him. Anyways, he says that we might not be able to measure subtle energies through physical means, but we can detect some of their signals because they change one type of energy into another. So that's the oscillation, that's the wave parts. They create a transducer signal at the magnetic vector. They also generate electric and magnetic signals that have observational effects. So this is This is a experiment he did. I think this is over 30 minutes. Yes. So this photo is done over 30 minutes. According to Tiller, etheric subtle energy penetrates all levels of material existence. And through the polarity principle forms atoms and molecules that take matter. He says our minds interact with the etheric energy to create patterns in physical dimensions. These patterns act like a force, patterns, not patterns, act like a force field that links us to the adjacent energy level. So this is a person and another person sitting 4 feet apart. This is the sources. This is the main person standing. This is the receiver standing. And then this is the energy that's measured between them. So you see how it changes a little bit here? So this is how it affects. This is superposition right here. He does like an experiment where like the source and the receiver are holding hands. So this is the source, this is the main person, right? That's their ECG. This is the receiver's ECG. And this is what happens when they hold hands. So these energies, even though they don't match exactly, they do affect each other, right? So like if somebody's in a bad mood, like how many times have we done this where you walk in a room and you're like, this person's in a bad mood. I can feel it. And then immediately starts to change your mood. This is your mood. We don't really need science to tell us that, but it doesn't hurt. So Tiller states, subtle energies are manifested by people as revealed in experiments that show subtle energies can increase electron sizes and numbers. He says a person can direct the flow of this energy through intention. So this researcher is saying that. This mind-electron interaction is effective even over great distances, and postulates several subtle substances occupy different time-space domain. This comes up a lot in quantum physics about occupying different time space, occupying multiple worlds. But I think that this really explains like dreams would be one great example. How somebody can affect your dreams, how somebody can affect your thought even though they're not close to you. They don't have to be in proximity to you. Same thing with your intention, right? This is like the law of attraction BS, which I low key on some level do agree with, but on many levels do not. But the direction of the flow of energy through intention, and this effect over great distances. This is, I saw something and I'm still thinking about it later. Those effects. Anyways, oh, we have something in the chats. When we ground, is that the geosphere? Yes, it can be. Yeah, it can be. That can definitely be our connection to the Schumann resonance, to connecting to the earth. Absolutely. That would be where we would connect through that.
Would it be any of the other like levels that you were talking about a couple slides before?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry
Let's
to go back.
no, you're good. This is great. I don't have like the everything up because it's recorded, and I watched a video from somebody where I couldn't see any of the slides because they had the chat up and they had everything up. So I'm trying to not do the same thing. So
That's
feel
okay.
free to just jump in. But no, actually, okay. So this is your grounding energy. Yes, this is what we're connected to the earth, right? We're standing on earth, so we're connected to earth, but there's definitely an effect that it has to our being. It is part of us, right? when we ground, when we have an effect, it does affect the rest of us. It does affect, excuse me, the rest of our field. So it can affect our chakras when you ground. It can change and shift the energy to what is operating more, right? So, you might have, say, a solar plexus that is amped and a crown that is completely amped and open because we are downloading and we are putting things into action. But that high is like so heady, right? When that happens. And so you're like, okay, I need to ground this energy. And so it can shift your auric field, it will shift your energy into the root chakras, the chakras that are in the feet, and then it'll change the way this oscillates, which in terms, like, everything's interconnected, right? So if we're thinking about microcosmic and macrocosmic, like, think of yourself as the disco ball, right? And so, like, you're trying to reflect that earth, and it's going to start to change the colors and the reflection in your disco ball and in your field. So what is operating, how they oscillate, how those waves are flowing is going to shift. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, it does. I
Okay.
was sort of wondering if only one field, like the geofield alone, was responsible for grounding, or when the geofield kind of, when we send that energy down, so to speak,
Hmm.
if it sort of
Hmm.
pulls all the other fields with it. And I think you explained like that
Yeah, it
it does
pulls.
shift all the layers. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
That's
Yep.
what, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's say, if you're an airport, this geofield is Delta, this is American Airlines, this is, so, like, you might use Delta specifically for international, right? But like, or like that's a bad way of doing it. Wait, I had a really good way of saying that. But you might utilize one for one thing or another, but it will affect, you know, the others. So if you're using this, then, like, Delta is going to pull up to that taxi, and now American can't really pull up, but like you might use American for something else. So um it's when you use it and it'll affect it. Like, it's what it connects to, what you utilize it for. So the geofield is used specifically to connect you to this earth, but it will affect the rest of you. All right.
Yeah, you could almost tie it into what we were talking about from Tiller with the like this slide here where the energies kind of
Yes. How it reflects
interact with each
here.
other. Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
totally.
Thank you.
Totally. So, like,
Yeah.
even down to a personal level, like, just your person, that energy is going to be reflected. And then now to a sentient being, right? To, like, an animal, to your pet, to um your partner, to a friend, and then, like, now also to the earth and to whatever. So we can, everything is reflected, macrocosmic, microcosmic. You can always take it outside, inside. And that's, like, kind of the beauty of a spiritual ecosystem. A couple other things I really want to note, in science, which I think is great, and I have a hawk here because that is a huge, uh, that is one messenger I feel very close to in my ecosystem. Um, Anti-worlds. These are parallel realities that form when a path is not chosen. The many worlds theory and the parallel universe theory arose from the question, where are all the choices not observed or not manifested in concrete reality? Um, I think that this is important. It doesn't really flow into the interconnectedness or the reflection aspect, but this does reflect into the possibilities aspect that we will start to get into in our next class. Um, but it does tie in with that many worlds theory, right? Remember the four eminence, the four formative worlds. So maybe there is a bigger eminence that trickled down, but what worked for you, what you took into action is going to be just one aspect of that. That's the choice that comes through your filter. There's also entanglement, not the Will Smith, Jada Smith thing, but two or more objects can interrelate and affect each other even when they are separated, perhaps by thousands of miles or dimensions. This phenomenon is called quantum entanglement, and it relates to an object or particles that have been once connected. So it's kind of what Tiller is saying. Um, not only do several subtle substances occupy different time space domain, but they can also affect even over great distances. This is also that superposition, you know, what Roddenhoff says, like it can affect you. Sorry, I'm a little sick, so it can affect you even if it's just that moment. It can still affect you. And so, what is time? So you could have had a moment with somebody, but time is not linear, and even if you're separated, it might continue to affect you. And dimensional work is what we're talking about when we talk about the Akasha, when we're talking about um, divine support or spiritual connection or even galactic tendencies or feelings, or this feeling that like I've already done this somewhere and I feel like I have a very clear view of this happening, but this didn't happen. Like it's that's the quantum entanglement. Um, and so like sometimes when we are in a situation and we're like that thing I was saying, like I feel like done this before, but I don't know when, but I know what the outcome was or whatever, like that can affect our ecosystem. That affects us in how we think and how we move forward and how we take action or inaction. Um, cool. Um, oh, also something I missed here. Within Teller's module, the meridians and chakras operate like antennae that detect and send signals from the physical into the upper domains. These subtle structures interact between the physical body and the etheric realms, illuminating higher orders so that we can perceive them from a physical plane. He says that the communication in the physical realm is accomplished through the five senses to reach into the etheric level. He even says that this researcher, he says we must use our intuition. So this is him essentially saying that all of this, all of the from the core of our body, from the beginning of this science part, like the meridians affecting our chakras, affecting our auric field, those waves that come out of that are antennas. They're the frequency that we tune into and we start to detect and send signals, right? That's our synchronicities, that's our signs, that's our tendencies, our desires. And what does that manipulate? That manipulates our reality. So within our spiritual ecosystem, actually, I'm going to come out of this and talk directly to you guys because this is really weird to not see you all. Okay. So within our own ecosystem, right, we are sending out constantly pings and it's not intellectual. So this idea of like manifestation, this idea of like positive thinking, like it's more than that. It's not in your head, like get out of your head, honestly. It's within your body, right? And so it's really important because this is what we're sending everything out of. This is what we're sending signals. And we're saying within our body, I trust and I believe that I'm supported from my ecosystem, then the ecosystem is going to start sending that out. But that can't be in the mind, that has to be within the body, that has to be within trust. right? And so that's what he's saying. Like, you have to use your intuition for these things to really interact with you. So all of the science is basically saying, what I'm saying is, like, we have this giant torus field, right? Like that picture that was in the, in the beginning of science. And within that field, imagine coming into your orbit, the different people, your phone, your computer, birds, you know, that is operating and going to connect to those waves. And it's not that you are centric to it, because when something else comes in, there's going to be another field and it's going to interact. So you are always operating constantly within a field with other beings, and you're not separate from it. So all of that to basically talk you into believing that is like essentially what we're doing. So going back to the screen. Sorry. Oh, where'd it go? All right. All right. So we're going to get into biocentrism in our next class, because even though it is a newer um, a newer quantum physics like body of work, it oddly reflects a lot in Buddhism, but uh, this is going to kind of go into hand in hand with the idea of possibilities and signs. But what they say, Dr. Robert Lanza, he's like, I think he was on the Times 100 most influential people in the world right now. He is a major researcher. I think he's out of Brown, but he says, at death, there's a break in our linear stream of consciousness, and thus a break in linear connection of times and places. Indeed, biocentrism suggests it's a manifold that leads to all physical possibilities. More and more physicists are beginning to accept the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics, which states that there are infinite number of universes. Everything that can possibly happen occurs in some universe. So again, the many worlds, the world of emanation, this is all kind of wrapping everything up into a really nice bow, that everything exists, everything can exist, and the possibilities are endless. So I think that in the grand scheme of, could that really happen? Did that really happen to me? Is that really a sign? Like, yeah, totally. It can definitely be that, because science is telling us, like, it exists. Every possibility, every yes, every no exists. So I mean, we've seen this meme, but I just wanted to show, like, we were talking about the torus fields, right? And so when you're in a field, this is like, try to imagine this in 3D and with like 4 people, and how equal that all affects everybody. So, it's not necessarily that you're eccentric, but it's operating all the time. This is that Kirlian photography. So this is a maple leaf, and that photography was showing these, I think this is the electromagnetic charge, or this is water. This is water. Okay. So something that they found in that photography is that it measures water, but this is how the measurement of water comes. And there's like a cool YouTube video where they break a leaf off, but the ghost of that leaf still shows up. Um, there is a Akashic theory that, and I believe in this, that water holds information, for the universe. And it sort of explains kind of that whales um, basically peen out sonar to ripple out the information and clean the water. It's like a wild theory. It's intangible, but it kind of does circumambulate back to the visions of Ezekiel and how water holds secrets. And in Jewish mysticism, water always represents secrets. And I just think that that's kind of beautiful and cool. So, it's not necessarily just you and your pet and your lover, but it's also the water that's around you, the trees that are around you, everything that is around you holds information and you are a part of it. So this is a cool video. This shows the relationship of magnetic flow. So we can see this as two beings and how they interact. We can see this as, like, say somebody is downloading or you're in a session with somebody. We can see this as a protective field. Even if you have a protective field in magic, right? You see that this is going to be like whatever, but say you have like negative energy. I don't really believe in negative energy, but say you have like the idea of negative energy or a demon or something, and you put a protective force around you, and it's going to protect you, right? But it's still what your energy is putting out still aligns with that being. I can like really unload and get into the science of all of that, of like how it's actually in alignment. There is no evil and it's actually there for your benefit. But, anyways, I digress. I think this really shows a magical perspective as well. And how our environment also connects with us. You can see within it, it's the energy is still swirling. So you have your own energy, but everything else is going to constantly interact. So you can almost see this as yourself, a bird, your partner, your pet. Somebody in a bad mood. It helps you visualize how a spiritual ecosystem operates and interacts with each other. All right, cool. So that is the lesson part of today's class. We are going to get into a short little journey before I let you go with some homework. But does anybody have any questions, any comments, any want to share anything? Like, by all means, go for it. Does any of this make sense? Okay.
I had a couple of questions that I was just writing down because I didn't want to interrupt the flow.
Yeah, I
But I
appreciate
don't
that.
know if you want to go into those, or they're kind of like maybe too vague, or you can pick and choose what's relevant to talk about.
Yeah.
So one thing that occurred to me was, how do we know that we are not in fact living in an anti-world? And related to that was, if there are these other worlds where everything that could possibly occur does like exist in some of these anti-worlds or other worlds, when we say that we're reading the Akashic records, it's like a multiple part question. When we say that we're reading the Akashic records, it's always been explained to me as like a reservoir of like universal cosmic information. But
Hmm.
like in quantum physics terms, are we just picking up and sensing these vibrations of other worlds with the Akasha? Like, is that describing almost like a different model of it?
Yeah, so let's break this down. Anti-worlds. Does it matter if we are in the anti-world? I
My
mean, we
world
don't
is the
know,
most important world. My
right? So
world is
does
the
it,
most
so does
valid.
it, it doesn't matter. I don't think it matters to have the answer to that because what we know, like if we get too far outside of that, we're going to like completely jump over our reality. And what we're trying to do is bring more understanding or spiritualism in our everyday reality. So it's really easy to get really caught up into these like big ideas and these ideas that are just so beyond the conceptualization that we can understand. So like personally, I don't think it matters to know if we are in the anti world. Probably. I mean, I don't know. But I also kind of believe that we're living in many worlds at once. So I just understand where I'm anchored in my reality. So that's the first aspect of that. The second aspect, when we talk about the Akashic records, whoo, I could talk about this for a while. Um, I hate it. I hate it so much. I really do, because I really think that there's this pop idea that the Akashic Records is one location that has like a cosmic library, and this is where we pull all this information. But information is the way we understand it as human beings is intellectual. And that is, the Akasha is so beyond information. It's so beyond knowledge. It's so beyond possibilities, honestly. It's limitlessness and it's boundless. That's what I believe. I think it's more in line with the Ein Sof and the idea of the Kabbalistic of like limitlessness and boundlessness, which means it's beyond my idea and what I can understand. Now, when I connect with the Akasha, I'm not going there for answers. I'm just not. And that's part of the reason why I sort of stopped giving readings, because the Akasha is so much more than that. For me, the Akasha is a lens, it's a perspective, and it will challenge your perspective of reality, and it will challenge your perspective of emotion. And I think that that is information. And I know that that's a little like, you know, guys mixed weeds, like, yeah, man, it's just like, but it kind of is, because it's just so much more than that. I think the Akashic Records has become a catch all for psychics, and that's not what the Akashic Records are. I can give a psychic reason or reading when you are in the Akashic field, or I don't like to say in the Akashic field because that says that like I'm in a sacred space connecting to it. You can connect to it because it it's not relative to one space. It's just not. It is in our space already. And that's really what I want to teach in this class, is that this idea that you need, look, when I do intuitive work, when I do psychic work, whatever, sometimes I do read prayers to get into an informational context or to get into a formative world. But my everyday is in the Akasha. And that is knowing that the information or the love or the connection or the support is being shown to me in my everyday world, um, in the smallest things. And that is an orientation that just takes time to learn. So I hope that answers your question, sort of. Does it?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Especially for me, because like I said, I think that the Akashic has always been sort of, like you said, modeled to us as a library, or in my
Yeah,
case, I had always heard it was almost like an aquifer of knowledge that like you tap into, and it just doesn't seem like that's actually the case at all. So it's really nice to like hear you kind of
yeah. No,
discuss
I
it
mean,
from your view.
sure, you can definitely get information, like, the intellect. You can definitely get that from the Akasha or from the angelic realms or from whatever. But I think the true mystic, the real, if you are really anchored into a spiritual reality, which is saying, I'm not trying to escape my reality, I'm trying to put heaven on earth, right? I'm trying to live this as like I think it's important to just be fucking stoked on life. For somebody who has spent life not stoked on it for a really long time, I think that the more you do this work, the more you realize that this life is spiritual. And so I think we constantly want to know. And I think that that puts us out of being, if that makes sense. And I think that Akashic work and being in connection with the Akasha, being in connection with your spiritual ecosystem, is Akashic work and is allowing you to be. So when you start to allow yourself to be, you start to understand flow and surrender. Like you see that stuff online all the time. It's like surrender. What does that mean? What do you mean surrender? Well, when you start to trust and flow what's around you, you're not that concerned. You're not trying to force something. You start to feel the resonance or the anti resonance, and you're not doing those things. Like when you feel that, you're like, ooh, okay, let's not do that anymore. You surrender to it. You're like, okay, I'm listening. We're moving along. Then things like manifestation start to come to you so much easier because you're not worried about the outcome anymore. You're worried about the being. And those possibilities end up being so much bigger than the outcome you are coming up with. So I can say, like, I want $10,000. Well, the universe might be like, well, we're going to give you an investment property that's worth $50,000, but that's not the cash that you're looking for. Would I have been able to come up with that? No, that's me being inside of my head. So I just think that um, being is really important, and we forget to be. And when we start to be and we are confident in that and we start to trust that, um, possibilities open up and they are endless and it is awesome. And I don't know, you just don't stress as much. So yeah, yeah. Any other questions?
I do, but I'm gonna save them for, I have one other one, but I feel like this is a good like spot for my questions to end. Room for
Are
somebody
you sure?
else's.
All right. Yeah.
Yep.
Anybody else? Questions, comments? All right. All right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do like a quick little journey. Um, I am going to put in a chat. Let's see. So if you've done work with me before or any journey work with me, um, sometimes I will send music to the chat. The way you do this is, I mean, please keep your computer on silent. But if you have headphones in, it's great because you can have this tab open and also have your music player in the background. That's why I usually recommend an iPad or a computer. And you can hear me at the same time as the music. You can also just choose not to use the music, but alpha waves are great because they put us in a hypnagogic state. And that's usually when we get our highest level of guidance. That's that weird in between sleep and awake phase. So I'm going to drop that in the chat. let's see, to everyone. Oh, wait. And for those who are watching the recording, I will put the link in. And also, like, you can do this in your own time again, too, with the music. Let's see. Okay. Oh, it won't go. Okay. Let's share. Mm, Sorry, guys. Let's try it one more time. And if not, then we'll skip it. Oh, here we go. Copy link. All right. All right. So this is from Apple Music. If you are on Spotify, let's see. All right. It is. All right. And that's Spotify. So you can click that and open it up in whatever player you prefer. Just keep my window open so you can hear me. If you want to go off video, you're welcome to close your eyes. No one's ever looking at you, but there's like an extra layer of protection that allows you to seep a little deeper into it. So, all right. And if you have headphones, throw those in because they are alpha waves. And we're just going to do a quick little journey. So if everybody is ready to go, you can go ahead and press play. And close your eyes. And just take a deep breath here in through the nose. Exhale. Just absorbed a lot of information. So let's just get out of our head and into our bodies. So in through the nose, filling your chest, expand your bellies. Exhaling. One more time, anchoring ourselves into our bodies. Exhaling, letting it go. We're going to do a quick little scan, starting from our feet, moving over our toes, over the tops of our feet, around our ankles, moving up our calves, knees, around and behind our thighs, scanning over our pelvis and hips, the smalls of our back, bellies, our side body, around our chest, back of the heart, armpits, shoulders, over the arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, hands, fingers, around our clavicle, over the throat, the jaw, lips and cheeks, nose, ears, eyes, foreheads, and the top of our head. And start to feel the energy tingling around your body. And the outlines of your side body, your arms, your face and head, your legs. Start to sense what that energy is like. Sense the temperature in the palms of your hands, the bottoms of your feet, and I want you to anchor your awareness into the electromagnetic field of your heart, pulling your awareness into your heart and allowing yourself to show yourself the far reaches of the energy of your heart. And on the most outer part of the reach of that energy, start to create this boundary. It's not protective, it's just the boundaries of yourself as the field that surrounds you. Being marked by the outermost points of the electromagnetic field of your heart and creating that egg around you. Once those points are drawn, I want you to allow your energy to show you what your field feels like, sounds like, moves like, so that you may get a sense of your field. so that you may understand the movement, the sound, the feeling of the extensions of yourself. Now, I want you to continue this awareness of your field, but within the space of your room. Start to outline your room, sense what furniture is there, what is underneath you, behind you, in front of you. And I want you to highlight any material, intelligence, or sentient beings in your room, whether that is water, a plant, a phone, a computer, a pet, a partner. Allow them to be highlighted. Even your books. And once you have all of those beings highlighted, start to envision their energy fields around them. Allow them to grow however far and wide they want to grow. Allow whatever sounds or feelings to come from them. And start to notice where they connect within your field. When they make contact with your field, start to sense the connection in the energy between you and them. How does that energy flow? What does it feel like? How does it cycle? Do they connect to each other? Do these bodies fill your room? Expand past your room? Get a sense of the energetic world that you exist in. Now, if any of these beings connected to your field have a message or a sign that they want to offer you, allow them to highlight themselves and to offer you that insight now within your field. And if you receive nothing, don't worry, because it is in your field. It will show itself. Keeping your awareness on the flow of energy between you, these beings, your room, the waves and oscillations that are happening within your space. We're going to ask the system for a little assistance in our homework. And we're going to ask for a sign or a symbol or a number or a song to present itself to us over the next week. And if it would like to offer you that sign, symbol, number now so that you are aware, or the resonance so that when you see it, you know. And if it is resonance, ask your body of energy to give you a taste of what resonance feels like in your body now. With this understanding of who we are and what we are a part of, we are going to continue this understanding beyond this class, beyond this journey. We are going to return our awareness back to our bodies, understanding that this energy is always around us. This system is always working. Bringing our awareness back around the head, the shoulders, the arms, the side body, the belly, the thighs, the calves, the feet. Inhaling deeply now. Exhaling. Inhaling again through the nose. This time, if you would like to make a sound when you exhale, bringing your awareness back to self. And when you're ready, simply invite some subtle movement to your fingers, your toes, your heads. Gently open your eyes with a gentle gaze and feel free to come back. All right. How does everyone feel? How was that experience of like seeing what's in your orbit?
It was like intense.
Yeah, I could feel it too, just guiding. Excuse me. But I'm hoping that anchors you all more into this sense of being and how connected you are to everything around you. Um, it's just so weird, like even just sitting in this room, like I have stuff in this room, but you don't really fully come aware to the fact that I have, you have books, you have a computer, you have a phone, you have plants, you have all of these beings that are constantly surrounding you where you are truly not alone. And truly in your own mind, yes, you're the center of your universe, but you really aren't the center of the universe, and it kind of takes the pressure off a little bit. Um, how's everyone's feeling experience with this class so far? Are we kind of getting it where we're going, the trajectory that we're going? Like basically, I just really wanted to lay some groundwork into understanding um I guess the source of energy that is coming from us and to us, if that helps to lay the foundation to make this make sense. Feeling good about it? Yes. Okay. Cool. So we'll meet not next Thursday, but the Thursday after. I think that's the 19th. In the interim, uh, your homework is just anchoring yourself in this awareness of what is around you, even down to the bugs that show up in your house or, you know, the song that plays when you get into your car. Every small thing, we want to shift our awareness. And through this little journey that we took, that it is starting to attune you to that. So if you start to feel like you're noticing every little thing, great. Welcome to my world where attention to detail is my downfall. But um, it might feel a little overwhelming at first to feel like you're like noticing every little thing, but it does soften up a little bit. So feel free to use Discord if you're feeling weird, wonky. Um, sometimes like a part of attunements, especially when we're reorienting our lens, things like colors might feel a little bright, or the sunlight might feel like too, like when you go outside, like a little too bright. So things like that. If that's coming up and it's uncomfortable, feel free to write it in the chat. Um, I would like for all of you to start a notepad in your phone. I say that over a journal because your phone is just so accessible to you. And in the middle of the night when you're half asleep, you don't necessarily want to turn on a light and get out a pen and paper, right? So if things are coming into your orbit that feel very resonant, that are feeling like, I like to tell my clients and my students, if you're like, was that a sign? Yes. If you're questioning it, yes, it is a sign. It is a symbol. It is a synchronicity. It is for you. And again, like, remember, we just learned that all possibilities exist. So if it could be, then it probably is, right? So I want you to start keeping this notepad in your phone, just the date and the item, or maybe even the feeling that you have. It doesn't have to be, a full on dream or a full on, like, this is what happened. Just write the thing, because just the reckoning, just the like attention to it or recognizing that is just enough to tell the universe or tell your system that, like, I got it. I got this thing. And we're going to get more into communicating with your system and linguistics and weaving the linguistics in the next class. And so in the next class, we'll be able to share some of these, and we'll get to, like, really dive into, how do you talk to your system? How do you have these conversations with the universe to say, I want more of this. I need more guidance. I need more support. Or I got it. I understand. And we start to learn how we're going, or what's the language that it speaks to us in. So, sometimes I will get clients that are like, I got this sign, so it means this, right? And this is the thing that XYZ. Well, a lot of the times one sign means multiple things. Or in my case, I know that my system likes to talk to me in mile markers. So it will give me mile markers rather than answers to things, just so I know where I'm going. And everyone's different, right? It's your language. So having this notepad will help us really start to formulate a base for the language that we start to create. Okay? Does that make sense to everyone? Any questions, comments, anything before we go?
Just say thank you. I'm kind of quiet and like tired tonight, but it was super enjoyable. So sorry if I look out of it, but thank you for everything.
Yeah, of course. No worries. I mean, it's 11 here. So
Same.
and I have like two little kids, so I'm also very tired, so I get it.
Yeah.
But no, I appreciate you saying that. And sometimes I don't know if things are clicking in everyone's head, like making sense. So I appreciate you just giving me that little bit. That gives me just enough.
Cool. Yeah. I'm excited for more.
Cool. Awesome. Awesome. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for coming to today's class. I'm going to turn off the recording. Did I already do that? I did. So we'll have to figure that out. But if you have any questions, you need anything, reach out on Discord. If you're having trouble with Discord, just DM me on Instagram and we'll figure it out, or email me. Cool. All right, everyone. Have a good night.